Everyone. This is the special weather briefing for the weather we're expecting this weekend. In addition, I'm going to talk about a little bit of what's going to happen next week as well. All right, a couple main points that we're going to cover. Obviously, with the severe weather possible on Saturday, we are expecting a strong line of storms moving through Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. The timing and the eastward extent is still a bit uncertain. But we are fairly certain that a north-south line of storms will be moving through. The main impacts with that line, we are expecting damaging winds, and that may be the main threat overall, even though there will be embedded tornadoes. But down trees and power lines, we can expect, especially given the wet soils that we have around here and the really strong winds we're expecting along with this line of storms. There is a lot of wind with this system coming in, so I think that is going to be a big threat for us with the line itself. In addition, there is a lot of shear, and anytime we've seen shear numbers this high, especially with a squall line, we can usually expect some embedded tornadoes within the squall line. We usually call that a QLCS. Heavy rainfall with this, there'll be a quick shot of heavy rainfall, but the real heavy rainfall threat will start to really pick up early next week, and that's on the second bullet. We get the front moving through on Saturday. It stalls out to our south and then begins to return north on late Sunday into Monday, and then with that we get caught in a stalled front across the region, and that will give us several rounds and several days of heavy rainfall with that front. And so once the severe threat abates, we'll transition into a flood threat early next week. So the latest outlook from SPC that was issued overnight, this is their day 3. The enhanced risk area, which is a level 3 on a scale of 1 to 5, it does touch the Georgia border. And one of the reasons it's not extended a little further east is we're still lacking a little bit of confidence in the eastward extent of that squall line and how much it will hold together as it continues to head east. We are under a slight risk over much of western Georgia, generally along and west of I-75. There are points east of I-75. Obviously, you can see that on the map with the slight risk, and then the marginal risk extends further east. Now, that said, we'll have to watch this as it progresses, because if the squall line does maintain its intensity through the area, we could see some damaging winds extend all the way through the county warning area, all the way to the Georgia line. We'll just have to see how intense it remains as it moves through. And again, that's the uncertainty in that squall line eastward progression. When you look at the probabilities on their day 3 and their day 2, they just have an overall risk. They don't break it down by tornado, wind, and hail like they do on day 1. We'll see that on Friday night into Saturday morning. They'll update with their day 1, where they'll break it down by tornado probability and wind probability. This is just overall. But they do have a 30% risk on day 3, just to our west, and that's in the area in red. It's actually quite high and rare for them to go 30% with a hatched area on day 3. The hatched area is that blue hatching, and what that indicates is this chance for significant severe weather, really strong damaging winds, and even strong tornadoes. And so again, we'll have to watch as that as we get closer to the event, whether or not some of this starts to creep into our western part of our warning area in western Georgia. And again, as confidence increases, we'll see this outlook change, especially on the eastern extent. In terms of what we see right now as the main threat levels and confidence combined, you can see damaging winds is going to be our primary, and we're pretty confident in that, just looking at the amount of wind associated with the system just off the surface. And then tornadoes would be our secondary with this initial surge. Rainfall, not as much initially. We're not talking as much, and I'll show that in a second. Same thing with large hail. We're not expecting a lot of large hail with this. So I think the wind is really going to be our biggest concern, and combined with any embedded tornadoes. You can see forecast confidence. We're pretty confident in this overall. There's a lot of models are generally agreeing on the system itself. The only thing we probably lack is how far east the overall extent is. But especially west of I-75, we're pretty confident in both of these. So here's a little timing graphic. We're still outside a lot of our high-res models. This is one of the lower res models. Maybe by tomorrow, we'll have a lot of our high-res models. We'll have this inside the window, in the 48-hour window. So right now, we're just having to deal with some of the lower res stuff. But you can see, generally speaking, squall line moving in during the afternoon into the evening hours on Sunday. Timing is going to be the biggest thing. Sometimes these things race out a little bit faster than what the models are picking up on, so it could be a little bit earlier than what's showing here. But generally speaking, around 4 o'clock, approaching the state line, around 7 north-south, just getting into the metro, north-south line, and then by 10 p.m. from Athens down to Macon. And you can see this particular model, as it heads east, it starts to dissipate that line. That's what I was talking about, the eastward extent of that line. So we'll just have to, again, see how that holds up. When we look at the available energy and low-level shear combined, the high shear values are contoured. Those are the actual numbers on the screen. That correlates to a high tornado potential. This is the low-level shear. These are some really, really high numbers. And so with that line coming in with these kinds of numbers, we are expecting potential for tornadoes within the line. The available energy itself is enough. It's not extremely high, but it is high for January. So that said, it is climatologically above normal. So the combination of the two give us the confidence in the severe threat overall. The other thing, and I'm not showing it on the screen here, looking at the winds at about 2,000 feet, they are about 60 miles an hour out of the south. It's not going to take a whole lot to transport that wind down to the surface. It'll come down easily, especially with the line. And so the damaging wind threat is certainly going to be an issue with the line itself as it moves in, especially across the western part of the state. Transitioning into next week, as the front moves south, it looks like Sunday may be our best day, except maybe the far southeast counties and the southern counties. You guys may be in a little bit of rain with the front close to you, but models are generally agreeing that the front is going to back up. And if you look at the overall flow, by Monday, we're back into a southwest flow in the front itself. Let's see if I don't have a blue pen here. I do. The front itself is going to be stalled somewhere in this general vicinity where I'm drawing, somewhere in that middle of the yellow circle. That's on Monday, the top left. And you can see Tuesday, we're still in that southwest flow. The front's still draped across the region. And so we're going to see continuous rounds of rain running up and over that front for at least into Tuesday, possibly even into Wednesday. And so with that, obviously the flood threat is going to increase. And we're expecting a heavy axis of precip to continue along and just north of that front, wherever it stalls. And so when we look at the overall current forecast, you can see the forecast, at least from this morning, the heavy axis looked like it was going to line up along the I-85 corridor. This is the forecast precip into next week. Widespread 3 to 5 inches across the I-85 corridor. This is Monday through Wednesday. Widespread 2 across the entire area, really, except maybe the far southeast or areas south of the front. There will be some locally higher amounts possible, especially in the mountains, with this front location across the I-85 corridor. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is the models are wavering. If you look at the model I just showed, it was maybe a touch south. And so wherever this front stalls and then backs up will be key. Could be here, could be even further south across central Georgia. And so that'll be key in who gets the heaviest axis. This axis that we're showing right here could easily shift a little bit further south. Not expecting it to go north as much as we would maybe south. I think the trend is maybe touching it a little bit further south. But again, we'll just have to watch that over time. When I sum up this total 7-day rainfall, and this ends next Thursday, this will include the half to up to 2 inches we're getting this Saturday, and then the one I just showed you for Monday through Wednesday. We're talking widespread 4 to 6 across the region. 6 plus maybe in the mountains, again with the front stalled across the I-85 corridor. Flooding will definitely ramp up and become a concern during the early part of next week. Not so much with this first system, but definitely with the second round, Monday through Wednesday. So in summary, severe storms possible on Saturday. We're expecting that strong line to move through Saturday afternoon, evening. Timing and the eastward extent, as I mentioned, still a bit uncertain. The main impacts will be damaging winds with down trees and power lines. We do think that is going to be a big concern Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, with the amount of wind that's just off the surface. With the amount of shear, obviously, embedded tornadoes within the line will be a concern as well. Heavy rainfall with the initial line, it will be a rainfall rate issue. So you'll see rainfall rates really high with the line itself, but we're not expecting big totals, maybe up to 2 inches with the line itself, but it'll come pretty quick. But like I mentioned just now, the heavy rainfall flooding threat will increase into next week as that front stalls and backs up across the region. So what are we planning? The future updates and briefings, the GoToWebinar, we've already scheduled one for tomorrow at 1 p.m. And then we'll send out an additional email overnight, which will include the day one SPC outlook information. So we'll get a breakdown of the tornado and the wind risk overall and how much extent into Georgia they extend that. And then we plan to transition into a warning operation mode Saturday morning, maybe into early afternoon. So any updates we do post the email overnight Friday into Saturday morning will be relayed real time via NWS chat and social media. So we'll refer you guys over to that. Lastly, here's the contact info, and the briefings are, I'm told, now working. So you should be able to download the PowerPoint and the PDF that's online. So that concludes this briefing. I'll go ahead and stop recording and open up for any questions.